I'd like to announce that diversity, equity, and inclusion is officially dead, or at least dying as fast as we can kill it. If you don't know about diversity, equity, and inclusion, in other words, DEI, let me fill you in just a little bit before we tell you about the inevitable and not fast enough demise. Nobody is against diversity, of course. Equity, well, that should be a bad word. Equity does not mean what a lot of people think it means, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. And inclusion, nobody is against inclusion, but when you combine the three things, what you end up getting is racism and communism. Equity, if you don't know this term already, is being used irreplaceable with the term equality, which the two are very different things. Equality means the equal opportunity that every American should enjoy. Equity, on the other hand, is the equal outcome of everyone, regardless of the decisions that they make. So equity literally is what the communist utopians think will happen if government intervenes and makes everything equitable for everyone. I've said this many times before, equity should be a bad word. But to get back to this DEI stuff, you've probably heard about it. It arose from the 2020 death of George Floyd when everybody needed to do something. And DEI departments were instituted across colleges and businesses. But now, people are rolling them back. Tech giants like Google, Meta have slashed their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in 2023, despite the commitments that they made following the 2020 Summer of Love and Peaceful protests, or at least mostly peaceful. According to CNBC, the DEI-related job postings in 2023 have declined 44%. Google and Meta are also laying people off that held DEI roles at the company. Let me see, where am I reading this from? CNBC, somebody told CNBC, a consulting group, said that companies have cut nearly 90% of their DEI budget by mid-year 2013. Now, that is a good thing because DEI wasn't ever intended to promote the things that it claimed to promote. And there's actually an interesting, funny component here with regards to the big tech companies that we'll get to in just a second. But DEI was never intended to do any of the things, because what those things mean are not what they mean in the eyes of a super woke college or company-oriented individual pushing DEI. Diversity doesn't mean the diversity of things that are actually diverse, like ideas or outlooks or perspectives. No, diversity to them meant the most rudimentary of immutable characteristics, people's skin color. So that was a bad thing. I obviously already talked about equity. That should be a bad word and nobody should use it. And inclusion. Well, you will be included unless you have ideas to the right of Che Guevara, which is what a lot of these DEI people viewed as inclusive. We will include you unless we hate you, and we hate you unless you think exactly like us. So the whole thing was set up to fail, and most certainly did, or at least most certainly has been. Here's what I think is funny about this, because at the end of the day, I think the tech companies and their spokespeople are also just politicians. The DEI initiative companies, when laying off DEI people, said this. In a statement to Fox Digital, a Meta spokesperson said that tech giants remain committed to DEI initiatives, which is literally exactly the type of thing a politician would say. Doing one thing and then saying to the cameras and the media, we are doing the complete opposite thing. That's like Alejandro Mayorkas, the border secretary, or the secretary, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, going on TV and saying, the border is secure. Yeah, exactly the opposite of what is true. The Meta spokesperson said, our commitment to DEI remains at the center of who we are as a company. Except it's not, because you're firing all of the DEI people. But also, this isn't just companies being eliminating their DEI programs. There's also states. A bunch of state legislation has now passed in Florida, Texas, now Iowa, and Oklahoma just issued an executive order saying, yeah, we're done with the whole DEI thing. And guess what? They're leaning more towards meritocracy, which is something they should have been doing from the get-go. This is from the Daily Signal. In the latest lawmaker to prohibit the use of taxpayer spending is the governor of Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt, who is a Republican, they say. They make sure to mention in that article. Stitt issued an executive order prohibiting any executive agency, including public colleges, from requiring job applications to complete a DEI statement or loyalty oath to diversity as a condition of applying. Thank goodness. If you don't know about the loyalty oath thing that's been happening in states like California and Arizona, where you need to sign a loyalty oath in order to be a part of the university and pledge fealty to the diversity, equity, and inclusion outlooks that the university holds. Again, diverse on the most rudimentary of immutable characteristics, your skin color, which is crazy to me. Equity is a bad word, as we already discussed. And inclusion, unless we disagree on the most fundamental things, then we don't include you in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, and we will exclude you as much as possible. You may be wondering why there's a picture of Kamala Harris as this. Is because Kamala Harris, I believe, is the highest, most powerful individual who is an outcome of diversity, equity, inclusion? No. Who is a product of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Kamala Harris, I mean, I don't need to get into this. If you're watching this, if you're watching this and you've made it this far, you probably already are aware of the stance that we have on Kamala Harris. Checked some boxes, is moderately attractive, and therefore is now the Vice President of the United States, which is crazy to think about, but also, if you look at the trajectory of Kamala Harris in a one-party state, it's kind of, well, it makes sense as to how she became the Secretary of State of that state, and then the state senator, not the state senator, the federal senator from that state, and then ascended to the vice presidency. Again, checking boxes in the diversity, equity, and inclusion realm. Thank goodness this garbage is going away, and it can't die fast enough.